Before Spider-Man would become one of the most iconic Marvel superheroes ever created, before Spider-Man would become a multi-franchise sensation on the big screen being portrayed by Tobey Maguire, Andrew Garfield, and most recently, Tom Holland, before Spider-Man would finally give people a reason to like one of the most hated creatures in the animal kingdom, Spider-Man was created in 1962 by Marvel head writer Stan Lee and artist Steve Ditko. When Stan Lee initially brought the idea to the publisher Martin Goodman, it was dismissed for two main reasons. At the time, teenagers had only been depicted as sidekicks, not superheroes, and people hated spiders. Despite Goodman's doubts, Stan Lee managed to get Spider-Man published quickly by placing him into a final issue of a dying series, Amazing Adult Fantasy. Teenage readers quickly connected with a hero they could relate to, and there was a huge jump in sales for the final issue, so much so that the web-slinging hero got his own series greenlit, The Amazing Spider-Man, which is still running today, over 50 years later. By the time Spider-Man first arrived on the scene in 1962, his creator Stan Lee had already been working in the comic book business for over 20 years, but it wasn't an easy path for him to get there. Born in 1922 and living through the Great Depression, Lee's family of four shared a one-bedroom apartment in the West End of Manhattan. Lee used his hard-knocked upbringing as inspiration for Spider-Man, whose money struggles and teen angst would parallel his own childhood experiences. Stan Lee clearly had a knack for the comic book business, rising through the ranks from an ink filler to head editor-in-chief of Timely Comics, and saw the company evolve into Atlas Comics and then later into Marvel Comics in 1960. After the financial success that DC Comics saw in the 1950s with the Justice League, Stan Lee would try something similar. With the help of artist Jack Kirby, he created Fantastic Four, The Incredible Hulk, Thor, Iron Man, and the X-Men, among many others. Arguably the most famous creation is Spider-Man, or Peter Parker, the bullied nerd turned superhero who was bitten by a radioactive spider, developing super strength and the ability to climb walls. Oh, and let's not forget about his spidey senses. In the final issue of the failing Amazing Fantasy series, Spider-Man was revealed to the world. Back then it cost 12 cents. In 2011, a mint condition copy sold for $1.1 million. For the character's depiction, Stan Lee originally sought help from his go-to artist Jack Kirby, but he felt the initial drawings were too heroic for a teenager, like Captain America with cobwebs. There was also a concern that he looked too similar to the Fly from Archie Comics. Thus, Stan Lee enlisted the help of Steve Ditko for a redo. Steve made the decision to cover his face to hide his boyish looks and came up with the costume that stayed constant for the most part over the years. One of Ditko's most memorable contributions to the character was the addition of web wings. At the time it was just a decorative feature, but would later be used to make him glide like a modern day base jumping wingsuit. If you like this look, well, you'll be seeing more of it in Spider-Man Homecoming. Parker's backstory had the major plot points we still know him for today. His parents had died in a plane crash, and the honor student who would get bullied grew up with his Aunt May and Uncle Ben. He had a ton of personal baggage, and that wasn't common among superheroes at the time. In the beginning, he wasn't even heroic. Peter Parker's initial indifference towards crime would actually lead to the death of his guardian, Uncle Ben, and it was only after this traumatic experience that he would vow to use his powers for the greater good and not for his own glory. The recipe worked, and the success from the final issue of Amazing Fantasy resulted in him getting his own series, The Amazing Spider-Man, the following year. The title eventually became Marvel's top-selling series, and eventually multiple Spider-Man series would be released simultaneously. In the end, it was Spider-Man's tragic backstory that would actually play to his favor, making him one of the most interesting and relatable superheroes to date. A major cultural icon, and of course, a merchandising machine for the next 50 years. In fact, I can't believe they're rebooting the series again! As for the rest, you know the story because this is before they were fiction.